Hello, this will be part of this recent uploads ongoing series. I'll put links to previous videos in the description. Essentially just totally debunking the claims which are the foundations of the lost high technology argument. So whether it's from the everyone in the ancient aliens featured on there, they come when it comes to Egypt. There'll be a whether you can't cut, you can't lift, you can't polish, and the polishing. So really will be about the impossible precision polishing, impossible to achieve in the Serapeum. But one thing that they all say and all repeat is the use of Mohs Hardness Scale, and either they don't understand this topic, which they claim to be experts selling tours, etc. on, or they're very clever in the way that they twist the reality of it, omit important facts, details, but whatever their intention, whatever their agenda is, or non-agenda, whatever, it's just wrong. And firstly, we have to look firstly at Mohs Hardness Scale. So Brien Foerster, Chris Dunn, this whole sort of crowd that it's impossible to do, therefore lost high technology. Mohs scale, copper cannot work this, copper cannot work that. Links in the description to a video where they used a copper drill, hand-powered drill, to cut core holes in granite, including the tapering, the impossible to achieve. So this is another key thing, which is just bogus. It's been demonstrated. Cutting the perfect square corners of the Serapeum boxes, which are not, that should be addressed separately, because the Serapeum boxes, the flatness and the right angles, they cherry pick certain spots on certain boxes and then say therefore the whole box, and by implication all of the boxes are square and right angles. No, it's very, very cherry picked, and I've already covered it in brief, but there will be I have to do a whole episode on that, because when you hear about these Serapeum boxes, the impossibility, the perfection of them, rubbish. Beautiful, amazing work, but another thing is, a common trope is, how could Stone Age people make such wonderful stone things? Well, consider that statement. How could Stone Age people work with stone? Let's replace that. Here's an amazing bronze artifact. How could the Bronze Age people do such wonderful things with bronze? It's a thoroughly ridiculous statement. It's an emotive statement. It conjures up the image of cavemen, Fred Flintstone, Stone Age people. If you're in the Stone Age, or if your tools are with stone, if your survival relies on the ability to use stone, well, Stone Age people would be the best, probably people to, not the best, but would be highly skilled in stone, because that's their livelihood, that's how they survive. So that's another logical fallacy and emotive topic. But anyway, so Mohs Hardness Scale, what really is it? So we have Mohs basically from 0 to 10. Diamond is at the top, 10. I don't have a diamond, okay? So, but I have some examples here. So I have sandstone. What would be some of these pieces I've already played with. So, okay, different grades of sandstone. Got like some bigger sandstone blocks as well, but so sandstone. Now sandstone is easy to work. I mean, it's even, with copper. Now I take a sandstone block, and well, no one's going to argue that sandstone's hard to work. Now I've already drilled some of these holes, and I drilled them in the most primitive, worst way to do it, like least inefficient. So I just use this as a handle. Now it's so just do that by hand. Starting it is, you want to cut a little groove to start it, so for instance, that's fresh, there's no material in that, and so I'm going to continue this hole for a short time. I have virtually no leverage on it. I have no weight. This is the least efficient way to do it. But just as an example, well, people shouldn't be surprised that you can work. Well, sandstone, the Petra, for instance, that's supposed to be the work of a lost civilization because of sandstone, and well, you can work sandstone with copper very easy. Okay, you see how much material's already coming out? You can do these in minutes in this really, really bad way. If you had just a slightly better tool, a longer wooden handle. But why is that important? Well, because where does sandstone and copper fall on the hardness scale? Well, copper is about here, about 3 to 4. Okay, so we have a piece of glass, some emery cloth, just a normal, sandpaper for woodworking. That's actually made of garnet, which is a semi-precious stone. They did and still do make jewelry from garnet. Glass, limestone, sand, which I'll use this block, sandstone, and granite. So, and steel. Where would these fall on the Mohs Hardness Scale? Well, okay, you got diamond there at the top. Copper and limestone are about the same on Mohs Hardness Scale. And so even they couldn't work the limestone. Now most of the pyramid is made with limestone. I'm going to be explaining granite because, that's the hard part of it. Limestone is very easy to work. And I don't know, they still say copper, you can't use copper tools on limestone. No, ridiculous. I'll put links and examples to that. I'll cover that as well. But if we can do it with granite, we can do it with anything. All right, so limestone is a harder material to work than sandstone. This is limestone from Oberon, which as far as limestone goes is about as hard as it gets. So, of course, sandstone versus limestone. Limestone's a harder stone to work than sandstone. But where does sandstone fall on Mohs Hardness Scale? Well, it's up here. It's around about 7. Sandstone is harder than limestone. Sandstone is harder than copper, but I can work sandstone with copper very, very easily. So then we have glass. Okay. Now, let's first do it. Where would granite go? Well, granite's up basically the same as sandstone. Granite's super hard to work. Sandstone is, in comparison, very easy to work, but they're both at the same hardness. It's technically speaking, stones don't have hardness. It's the minerals that make them up that define the hardness. But I'll just be speaking in that sense to make it easier. Okay. Also have a piece of quartz. Now, where would quartz fall? Well, quartz would be slightly higher than granite and sandstone. Then we have garnet paper, because I don't have a nearby garnet or an emery mine. I'll be using those, but we can harvest this emery. I'll show you in a moment, and the garnet. Garnet would be just about the same, probably around about the same as granite, sandstone, and then emery would be slightly higher than quartz. And one way to test, I'll show in a moment, how do they test what is Mohs Hardness Scale. So we're left with steel and glass. Now, where would you think glass would fall on this? Well, first let's put steel. Steel's about here, about 5.5. What about glass? Well, glass is the same. Window glass, not the quartz glass that the ancients were using, making such as the faience glass, but window glass, in your drinking glass. It's the same as steel. Now, of course, if I was to whack that, I'm just going to shatter it. I don't need to demonstrate that. That's just bloody obvious. But, this glass is harder than limestone. Even if I got a chunk of glass, if I start banging on limestone, no one's made a limestone hammer, a limestone chisel, even though it's harder than limestone. Sorry, no one's made a glass or a glass hammer or a glass chisel, even though it's harder than limestone. The way that Mohs scale is explained and used in the lost high technology argument is just bunkum. It is really, really bad. Now, copper is down here about 3.5. Granite's way up there. Now if I well, anyway, flakes are all already coming off. If I strike it properly, I get a good spot. I'm going to take off a big flake, and I'm just doing that by hand. So to use with a copper chisel on these other stones, the hardness is not an issue in there. They're abusing science in that sort of sense. The same, well, all right, so you can, again, if you can start, that probably already had a fracture, so that's, probably not the best, because there was already a fracture there. But if you get it's like a small piece, you can break up granite with copper. It's just not, yeah, it's unbelievable that they get away with this type of stuff. So, but still, granite's up there. So what Mohs Hardness Scale, the way it is used is in, especially to boost and defend the lost high ancient technology argument, is just so way off. If you see how it works, now how do I know something? So how is this defined? So quartz is harder than copper. Now let's find a fresh piece. I hope you can see. Now if I take quartz, it's going to scratch the copper. Okay, that's what defines hardness in terms of Mohs Hardness Scale. You can see, yeah. But if I try it and I get the smooth piece there, okay, copper doesn't scratch the quartz. That's the field test when it comes to Mohs Hardness Scale. Now, how do I know about emery? So I'll get a bigger piece of paper of it. So emery cloth is or emery paper, because it's got a cloth backing, as where sandpaper has a paper backing. Emery cloth such as this. Now, how do I know it's harder than quartz? Well, I'll find there's a smooth piece where it's nice and smooth. Okay, now it's scratched. Okay, that's how it works. Now, this is key as well, because I'm going to be polishing a piece of granite to precision polishing, and the way, yeah, it's nowhere close to the way it's described. That's why I'm collecting this sort of material. So I'll be using these as abrasives. So that's just a bit of sandstone. This is crushed quartz. That's crushed granite. Now, because I don't have garnet close by, but you can go to your hardware and get garnet paper, and because it's got a paper backing, okay, I'm going to soak it in water, and then I'm going to be retrieving the garnet. Now, such as with emery paper, you can do the same thing. Now, I'm not going to be using emery with the cloth attached to it, because that's off-the-shelf modern stuff, and people will go, oh, but it's just emery glued to cloth. That's what it really is. If I was to use paper such as this, I'm not going to use it, but anyone who's going to go, oh, but that's, modern sandpaper, emery cloth, well, anyway, so I won't be using that, but the mental gymnastics that go into defending some of these things is incredible. So if you're doing this and you want to, I encourage you to go get your samples, look around, what stones you have. If you don't have emery or garnet, you can get it from your hardware, and you basically you could collect it like that. That's just a demo, like probably, yeah. And then you collect that powder. So that's the type of stuff I'll be collecting. I'll be using these in conjunction with a slurry made of ground sandstone, limestone, and also crushed granite. Important note is that this is actually quite bad for your health. This powder, this dust gets in the air and will get into your lungs, and I think it's silicosis that it will give you. It's actually a fatal condition, long-term exposure, even maybe medium-term exposure. So wear a mask. If you're going to do it safe, wear a mask. Now we get to the issue of impossible precision, which again is a joke, really. Now, still to this day, the best way to achieve perfectly flat surfaces is by hand polishing. And so I have a piece of, I'll be using a sandstone as the to polish the granite. This will be I've been experimenting a little bit and I found that this is the key. And there are a few other little tricks that I'll explain as I do it. But firstly, let's look at precision flat surfaces and how they are achieved. Well, firstly, to collect the sandstone, for instance this piece, I was just rubbing it on there and then it collects in these little holes, which is convenient, and then I could tap it out. But we don't have a flat surface to begin with, so let's start with this rough edge of the sandstone. You can see it's cracked, that's the fracture, it's as rough as you can get. And we also have another piece of sandstone there, very rough. By rubbing two surfaces together, which is really polishing, you're going to achieve precision flatness just as a byproduct of the process. But before we get, to do the granite polishing, you need to get some of your abrasives collected, and it just, precision. I take my straight edge and and that's always going to be, that's just the way things are. It's not a mystery at all. But Alright, so already you start to see the flatness emerging. If I was to keep going, I would eventually get down. Where's the other block? Oh, okay, so that's already. I didn't mean to polish the sandstone. I was just collecting the material, but I already have flat edge precision flatness in there. That's already there. So you can, at this point, you can turn off because that's how it works. But I will be showing you how to do it with granite, and to do it when I've been experimenting a little bit, and it's actually surprisingly quick. I don't know if he's going to show up quite as well, but I've already, I can feel it there. I'm hoping it's, and you can see it in the reflection. Maybe the camera light doesn't get it so much, but there are a few low points. I have to keep grinding, but I'm going to start with a very rough piece. When I do my example, I'm going to start with a very rough piece of granite, but just an experiment so far with the polishing effect of it. There are still a few low points, and that would need to keep being ground down, but it's actually quite easy, quick process, and hopefully you can catch it in the light. But okay, precision, impossible, machine flatness achieved. Alrighty, so where was that piece? Let's keep going with so with the sandstone. Okay, I'll start again there on the rough side. The dust in itself is actually a valuable resource to keep. Okay, that surface is already, starting to become flat. The best way to achieve precision flatness is actually to have three surfaces, and then surface A to B, then B to C, and then C to A. But to achieve flatness and polishing, it's again, I started with very rough stone, so you still have these low spots. but even like with that example, precision flatness is it's bunkum in regards to the impossible, therefore lost high technology machinery. All right, so any other points? So yeah, this will do with the cerupium, polishing granite, the Mohs Hardness Scale, you know, just where glass sits on Mohs Hardness Scale, the fact that you can work these other stones with copper, they will tell you cannot do it. Let's see it done. Let's get it done, and we can kill this off, this scam once and for all. All right, any other points? I think so. As an intro, this is that's what Mohs Hardness Scale is, and also I'll use crushed quartz. You can get your emery from emery paper, and if you're lucky enough to have blocks of emery available, you just pound them down. Even with softer stones such as limestone, you start banging on emery, it's going to crack, because quartz is quite hard, but it will shatter just like glass. The thing is, with stone, as opposed to metals, these will shatter. A copper chisel or a steel chisel doesn't cut the stone. The impact of it because all stone is all little bits glued together. They will break apart. That's just the nature of things. Now even quartz, which is more like a crystalline, it will still fracture and break. So quartz is quite hard, and to break this up, I've been banging it with limestone. Quite hard, quite soft, yet limestone is just gonna, that's how I got these flakes and got it to break off. Steel is quite soft. So where's a piece of granite? Now, again, you couldn't work, if I had a copper knife, it would be better, but even just with a butter knife, a kitchen knife, on a piece of granite, you're going to start to create a cut in there. So even just, with a few shakes, I don't know if you can see that groove. So yeah, so hardness and all is such a scam or mythology. It's either Dunning-Kruger, they don't know what they're talking about. They speak with expertise, they're quite well spoken and very convincing, but it's any of their claims, when they get fact checked, whether it's lifting, cutting, polishing, it all falls to shreds. There's nothing to it. It's a nothing burger. And then they charge people for it, even though that they've been told that these impossible things are actually not impossible. I'm not sure, depending on the jurisdiction, but many jurisdictions that would just be outright fraud. So best defense for slander or libel is truth. Alrighty, so that's pretty much it. I'm just going to, this is just an intro. Cerupium, impossible polishing. Well, it's very easy to do. I'll be using just the materials that they had, for instance, quartz, corundum or emery, garnet as well. And not only is it possible, it's actually quite much faster and surprising, than what I thought. So, and also the sort of sandstone dust, I'll be mixing that in as well. So there's actually a very simple way to do it, and it's very surprising how quickly the process works. Okay, so next one I'll be showing you how to polish granite, and by watching polishers at work, for instance those who polish telescope lenses, and the professional lapping, so where they make the precision flat surfaces by lapping, just by rubbing it with their hand polishing to make super precision, nanometer precision flatness. I've picked up a few tricks there, and now with experimenting, I've with Stone Age people understood stone. That's again this tricky wordplay, Stone Age people invoking this, that they're walking around dragging their knuckles. Well, Stone Age people would be pretty bloody, informed on stone. So again, I would say, well, Bronze Age people, here's a Bronze Age artifact. Well, Bronze Age people couldn't work with bronze. It's ridiculous. It is cringe. Now, they're good, they've got their script, They got their emotion, the emotive, logical fallacies stacked up in an emotive way with a beautiful script, just randomly pointing at stones. This is impossible. This is impossible. Well, it's dead. It's dead.